Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku asked for help earlier. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The cardboard box was not heavy, but Izuku Midoriya held it as if it contained a volatile explosive. It was marked simply, desktop items. Inside, wrapped in newspaper and care, was the limited edition Silver Age All Might figure. 3 weeks ago, unpacking this figure would have been a ritual of joy. It would have been the crowning moment of moving into a new space, a declaration of his fandom and his dream. Now, standing in the middle of his new room on the second floor of the Heights Alliance dorms, Izuku felt a wave of nausea roll through his gut. He set the box down on the desk. His hands were trembling. He clenched them into fists, staring at the scars that marred his skin, crooked, jagged lines that wrapped around his fingers and shot up his arm. The doctors said the scars would fade, but they would never disappear. They were permanent reminders of what happened when the vessel wasn't strong enough to hold the power poured into it. Midoriya! Are you done in there? The voice came from the hallway, muffled by the door. It was Kirishima. Izuku jolted, his mask sliding into place instinctively. He forced a smile onto his face, widened his eyes to feign excitement, and opened the door. Yeah. Just finishing up the last box. Kirishima was grinning, his red hair spiked to perfection even though they had spent the last 4 hours hauling luggage. Man, this place is insane. A whole mansion for the class. Kaminari and Siro are already arguing about whose room has the better view. You coming down? Everyone's meeting in the common room for dinner. I'll be right there, Izuku chirped, his voice pitching slightly too high. I just need to organize my books. Don't take too long, or Ashido will eat all the rice. Kirishima gave a thumbs up and jogged down the hall. Izuku watched him go, the smile slipping off his face the moment the footsteps faded. He closed the door and leaned his back against it, sliding down until he hit the floor. He drew his knees to his chest. The silence of the room was oppressive. Outside, the sun was setting, casting long, blood-orange shadows across the UA campus. It was a beautiful view. It represented safety. The Heights Alliance dorms were built in response to the Kamino Ward incident, to the kidnapping of Katsuki Bakugo, and the fall of the symbol of peace. They were a fortress designed to protect the students, but they couldn't protect Izuku from the voice in his head. Next, it's your turn. The words All Might had spoken into the camera, pointing a skeletal finger at the world, played on a loop in Izuku's mind. To the world, it was a warning to villains. To Izuku, it was an eviction notice. It was a passing of the torch that felt less like a gift and more like an anvil dropped from the sky. All Might was retired. The flame was gone. The embers were dying inside the man, leaving only the ash of a hero. And that meant the fire was entirely Izuku's to tend. He looked at his hands again. I'm not ready, he thought, the panic rising in his throat like bile. I can barely use 5% without feeling like my bones are vibrating. I saved Kaken, but barely. We couldn't save Bakugo without breaking the rules. And All Might. All Might used the last of his power because I wasn't strong enough to help him sooner. He stood up, shaking off the paralysis. He couldn't spiral. Not now. He had to go downstairs. He had to be Deku. He had to be the guy who always tried his best. He walked over to the box, unwrapped the All Might figure, and placed it on the shelf. The plastic hero grinned back at him, hands on his hips, fearless. I am here, Izuku whispered to the empty room. The words sounded hollow, bouncing off the freshly painted walls. Dinner was a boisterous affair. Class 1A was resilient, despite the trauma of the summer training camp and the fear of the villain attacks. Being together under one roof had ignited a spark of excitement. Sato had baked a cake to christen the kitchen. Ida was chopping the air with his hands, lecturing Mineta about the proper disposal of cardboard. Uraraka was laughing at something Tsuyu said, her cheeks flushed with happiness. Izuku sat at the edge of the table, poking at his curry. Deku-kun? He snapped his head up. Uraraka was leaning in, concern creasing her forehead. You okay? You haven't touched your food. Is it too spicy? No, it's delicious, Izuku stammered, taking a large bite to prove it, barely chewing before swallowing. I'm just tired. Moving is hard work, right? Tell me about it, Uraraka sighed, rubbing her shoulder. But it's exciting, isn't it? We get to be together all the time. We can study together, train together. It's going to make us so much stronger for the provisional license exam. Yeah, Izuku said. Stronger. Across the room, sitting on a sofa with his feet on the coffee table, was Bakugo. He wasn't yelling. He wasn't eating. He was just staring at the television, where a news program was debating the stability of Heroes Society post All Might. Izuku followed his gaze. The screen showed a graph of rising crime rates in just the last week. Bakugo's eyes flicked sideways. For a split second, crimson met green. There was no aggression in Bakugo's look, which was almost more terrifying. There was only a cold, calculating scrutiny. Bakugo knew something. He had asked Izuku about his quirk before, but after Kamino, after seeing All Might's true form, Bakugo was putting the puzzle pieces together. Izuku looked away first. He couldn't handle that scrutiny. Not tonight, Midoriya, Todoroki said, appearing at his elbow with his usual stealth. Ga! Todoroki-kun, Aizawa-sensei is looking for us. He wants to do a final perimeter check before curfew. Izuku nodded, grateful for the distraction. Right. I'm coming. As he stood up to clear his tray, he felt a phantom sensation in his right arm. A throb. A pulse of energy that wasn't there. One for All was restless. Ever since the fight with Muscular, ever since he had pushed the power to 1,000,000%, the quirk felt different. It felt larger, like a lake that had suddenly become an ocean, the bottom dropping out to reveal a terrifying depth. He ignored it. He smiled at Uraraka, waved to Ida, and followed Todoroki out of the warmth of the common room and into the cool night air. The nightmare came at 3 a.m. Izuku was standing in the ruins of Kamino Ward. The sky was a swirling vortex of purple and black. The ground was littered with the shattered masks of heroes, Best Jeanist, Empty Lady, Gang Orca. In front of him stood All for One. The villain had no face, just that expanse of scar tissue, and a mouth that smiled with too many teeth. You are a poor vessel, All for One said. His voice sounded like grinding stones. You are a cracked cup. You spill everything poured into you. Izuku tried to move, but his legs were trapped in black sludge. He looked down. The sludge wasn't mud. It was ink. It was the black substance that the warp villain used. It was dragging him down. I have to save them, Izuku screamed, reaching out. In the distance, All Might was kneeling. He was in his true form, skeletal and coughing blood. He looked up at Izuku, his eyes sunk in pits. Why didn't you run faster? All Might rasped. Why aren't you stronger? I'm trying, Izuku cried. He activated One for All. The red veins spread across his skin. Green lightning crackled, but the lightning didn't stop. It grew brighter, hotter. It began to burn his skin. The power swelled inside his chest, expanding rapidly, like a balloon about to burst. It's too much, Izuku gasped. Take it back. I can't hold it. It is yours now, All for One laughed. The weight of the world. And you are just one boy. Suddenly, the black sludge shot upward, wrapping around Izuku's throat. It wasn't just sludge anymore, it felt like tendrils. Whips of black energy lashing out from his own chest, strangling him. You are alone. You are alone. You are alone. Izuku woke up with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in bed. Crack. A shockwave of green wind blasted outward from his body. His bedside lamp exploded, showering the floor with glass. Papers from his desk went flying, plastering against the walls. The All Might figure on the shelf rattled dangerously. Izuku scrambled to grab his chest, breathing hard, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. Green sparks were still dancing along his arms, arching into the bedsheets, leaving small scorch marks. Stop, he hissed through gritted teeth. Stop it. Calm down. He squeezed his eyes shut, forcing himself to visualize the egg in the microwave. Don't let it explode. Keep the lid on. Turn the dial down. Slowly, the lightning faded. The room plunged into darkness, save for the moonlight filtering through the window. Izuku sat there, trembling, sweat soaking his pajamas. He looked at the shattered remains of his lamp. His control was slipping. Before, One for All had been a tool he struggled to lift. Now, it felt like the tool was trying to wield him. The anxiety, the fear, the pressure, it was feeding the quirk, making it volatile. He couldn't tell anyone. If he told Aizawa-sensei, he might be expelled for being a liability. If he told his friends, he would be putting a target on their backs. If he told All Might, he pictured All Might's face the last time they spoke. The man looked so tired. He had given everything. He deserved rest. If Izuku went to him and said, "I can't handle this," it would break All Might's heart. It would mean his sacrifice was for nothing. "I have to do this," Izuku whispered. "I have to figure this out." He didn't sleep for the rest of the night. He lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds until dawn. The next day of classes was a blur of exhaustion. During Hero Informatics, President Mike was shouting about the importance of special moves. Izuku took notes, but his handwriting was shaky. "Midoriya, bro, you look like a zombie," Kaminari whispered, leaning over his desk. "Did the excitement of the new room keep you up?" "Something like that," Izuku mumbled. He felt eyes on him. He glanced toward the podium. Aizawa was watching him. The teacher's eyes were half-lidded, bloodshot as always, but sharp. Aizawa didn't miss much. Izuku quickly looked down at his notebook, pretending to scribble a diagram. "He knows I'm off," Izuku thought. "I have to pull it together." Training that afternoon was in Gym Gamma. Cementos had created a labyrinth of pillars and platforms for them to practice mobility. "Today, we focus on refining your signature styles," Aizawa announced, his capture scarf loose around his neck. "The provisional license exam will require you to stand out. Speed, power, utility. Show me what you've got." The whistle blew. Class 1A sprang into action. Bakugo launched himself into the air with explosions, navigating the pillars with terrifying grace. Zero swung through the gaps like a spider. Uraraka floated debris to create stepping stones. Izuku took a breath. Full cowling. 5%. He felt the hum of power. He leaped, bouncing off a pillar, aiming for a high platform. Faster. I need to be faster. Gran Torino moves faster. All Might moves faster. He pushed. 8%. The pain flared in his legs, a dull ache in his bones. He ignored it. He landed on a platform and immediately pivoted to jump again. 10%. Midoriya, watch your spacing. Ida called out from below. Izuku didn't hear him. The noise in his head was too loud. The image of All Might pointing at him was burned into his retinas. "You're next. You're next." He was midair, aiming for a narrow ledge. He needed more power to make the gap. 12%? No, I can take more. I have to take more. He clenched his teeth. Smash! He channeled the power into his legs. But something went wrong. The energy didn't flow smoothly, it spiked. It surged with the erratic violence of his panic. A black wisp, like smoke, or a whip, flickered into existence around his forearm for a microsecond. It threw off his center of gravity. Instead of launching forward, Izuku spun uncontrollably in the air. He missed the ledge. He crashed shoulder first into the concrete pillar with a sickening crunch. "Deku!" Uraraka screamed. Izuku tumbled down, hitting 2 more beams before slamming into the ground. He lay there, gasping, the wind knocked out of him. His right shoulder burned. "Time out!" Aizawa's voice cut through the gym. In seconds, the teacher was there. Aizawa knelt beside him, checking his eyes. "Midoriya. Can you hear me?" I'm okay," Izuku wheezed, trying to push himself up. His arm gave way. "Just slipped." "You didn't slip," Aizawa said, his voice low and dangerous. "You lost control. You were erratic. I was trying to go faster. You were trying to break your neck." Aizawa stood up, offering a hand. "Go to recovery, girl. Get that shoulder checked. You're done for the day." "But sensei, I can still go." "That's an order." Izuku swallowed the lump in his throat. He grabbed his injured arm and walked toward the exit. He could feel the eyes of the class on his back. Pity. Confusion. As he reached the tunnel leading to the locker rooms, he saw a familiar figure standing in the shadows. It was All Might. The former hero was wearing his oversized yellow suit, looking gaunt and frail. He had been watching the practice. Young Midoriya, All Might said softly as the door closed behind them, shutting out the noise of the gym. All Might, Izuku breathed, looking down at his boots. I messed up. All Might placed a skeletal hand on Izuku's good shoulder. I saw. You seem distracted, my boy. Is the move to the dorms weighing on you? Izuku hesitated. He wanted to scream. He wanted to say I'm terrified. I'm drowning. This power feels like a curse. It is natural to feel pressure, All Might continued, his voice taking on that preaching tone he used when he was trying to be inspiring. But remember the origin. You wanted to be a hero who saves everyone with a smile. The symbol cannot falter. If you worry, the people will worry. You must be the pillar. The pillar. Izuku looked up at All Might. Really looked at him. He saw the hollow cheeks. The dark circles under the eyes. The arm that hung uselessly at his side. He saw a man who had held up the sky for decades, alone, until his body crumbled into dust. All Might was trying to help. He was giving the only advice he knew: grin and bear it. Hide the pain. Be strong alone. But that advice had killed All Might. Right, Izuku lied. The word tasted like ash. Right. A smile. Good. All Might gave him a thumbs up, coughing slightly as he did so. Blood speckling his handkerchief. Go get patched up. Tomorrow is a new day. All Might shuffled away down the hall. Izuku watched him go. A cold realization washed over him, chilling him deeper than the pain in his shoulder. He doesn't know how to teach me this, Izuku realized. He was a natural. He could use 100% from day one. He never felt the fear of exploding. He never had to learn how not to break, and he did it alone. And look at him now. If Izuku followed this path, the path of secrets, of solitary training, of bottling up the fear, he wouldn't become the greatest hero. He would become a tragedy. The shower water was scalding hot, but Izuku barely felt it. He stood with his forehead pressed against the tiles of the communal bathroom. Thankfully, it was empty. Everyone else was still at the gym, or eating dinner. He had visited Recovery Girl. She had scolded him, kissed his bruised shoulder, and sent him away with a gummy candy and a warning that his stress levels were interfering with his healing factor. He turned off the water and dried himself mechanically. He dressed in comfortable sweats and walked back to his room. He sat at his desk. He pulled out one of his notebooks, Hero Analysis for the Future, number 13. He opened it to the page on All Might. He flipped past it to the page on Eraserhead. Name, Shota Aizawa. Quirk, Erasure. Fighting style, Capture/Subjugation. Logical. Efficient. Izuku stared at the sketch he had drawn of his teacher. Aizawa was a man of logic. He hated irrationality. He hated waste. Wasn't this irrational? Izuku keeping a secret that was actively hurting his performance? Keeping the faculty in the dark about the true nature of the threat targeting him? All Might had said to keep one for all a secret to prevent chaos. To protect the peace. But the peace is already broken, Izuku thought. All for One is in Tartarus, but the League is out there. They know about me. Shigaraki knows. The secret isn't protecting society anymore. It's just isolating me. Izuku thought about the support circle logic Aizawa used for missions. You don't send a hero in alone if they have a bad matchup. You send a team. Why was One for All treated differently? Because it was special? Or because we are too afraid to trust? Izuku stood up. The clock read 8:45 p.m. His heart started racing again. This was dangerous. If he did this, there was no going back. All Might be angry. It might be seen as a betrayal of trust. But then he remembered the black whip of energy that had lashed out in the gym. He remembered the feeling of nearly taking his own head off. He wasn't All Might. He couldn't be the lonely god on the mountaintop. He was Izuku Midoriya. He was a kid who used to cry when he saw others get hurt. He was a kid who needed people. He grabbed his room key. He didn't put on shoes, just his slippers. He walked out of his room, down the hall, and past the common room where the faint sounds of a movie night drifted out. He didn't stop. He walked out the front door and across the courtyard to the separate building housing the faculty dorms. The night air was crisp. The crickets were chirping. Izuku stood in front of the door labeled 1A Homeroom Teacher. He raised his hand. His knuckles were white. He hesitated. Turn back, a voice said. Be the hero. Handle it yourself. No, Izuku answered that voice. Being a hero means saving people. And right now, the person who needs saving is me. He knocked. 3 sharp raps. Silence. Then, shuffling footsteps. The lock clicked. The door opened. Shota Aizawa stood there, wearing a black tracksuit, his hair tied back in a messy bun. He held a juice pouch in one hand. He looked down at Izuku with tired, unamused eyes. Midoriya? Aizawa checked his watch. It's almost curfew. What is it? If this is about your shoulder, I already got the report from Chio. Izuku opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He was shaking. Now that he was here, the magnitude of what he was about to do crashed down on him. Aizawa's eyes narrowed. He saw the tremor in Izuku's hands. He saw the sheer, unadulterated panic in the boy's eyes. The teacher's demeanor shifted instantly. He wasn't looking at a student who broke curfew. He was looking at a victim in distress. Aizawa stepped back and opened the door wider. Come in. Izuku stepped over the threshold. Aizawa's room was sparse. A sleeping bag in the corner, stacks of paperwork, a cat sleeping on a cat tree. It smelled like coffee and antiseptic. Sit, Aizawa pointed to a low chair. Izuku sat. He gripped his knees. Aizawa closed the door and locked it. He walked over, pulled a chair opposite Izuku, and sat down, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. You're not here to talk about homework, Aizawa stated. It wasn't a question. No, Izuku whispered. Is this about the league? Sort of. Is it about Bakugo? No. Talk to me, Midoriya. Be logical. What is the problem? Izuku took a deep breath. It felt like inhaling glass. He looked Aizawa in the eyes. Those dark eyes that could erase power were now just waiting, patient and grounding. Sensei, Izuku started, his voice cracking. Tears pricked the corners of his eyes, hot and shameful, but he didn't wipe them away. I can't keep a secret anymore. I tried. All Might told me I had to. He told me I had to be the symbol. But I'm not him. Aizawa went very still. What secret did All Might tell you to keep? Izuku clenched his hands so tight his fingernails bit into his palms. My quirk, Izuku said, the words rushing out like water from a broken dam. It's not what you think it is. I wasn't born with it. It was given to me. Aizawa didn't blink. He didn't scoff. He stayed perfectly still, absorbing the irrational statement with total seriousness. Given to you? By All Might? Izuku nodded, a tear finally escaping and tracking down his freckled cheek. Yes. It's called One for All. It's a power passed down to defeat all for one. And it's getting stronger, Sensei. It's changing. Today in the gym, that wasn't just a slip. The power lashed out. I don't know how to control it anymore. And the more scared I get, the more dangerous it becomes. He looked up, pleading. I'm scared I'm going to hurt someone. I'm scared I'm going to break apart. All Might, he's trying to help, but he just tells me to smile. I can't just smile. I need actual help. I need to know what to do. Izuku buried his face in his hands, his shoulders shaking with sobs he had suppressed for months. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I lied. The room was silent for a long time. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator, and Izuku's jagged breathing. Then, he felt a hand on his head. It was firm, heavy, and warm. Izuku looked up. Aizawa wasn't angry. His expression was one of intense, simmering fury, but it wasn't directed at Izuku. His jaw was set, his eyes hard as flint. You have nothing to be sorry for, problem child, Aizawa said, his voice low and steady. You did the most logical thing you could have done. Aizawa stood up, his capture scarf shifting. He pulled his phone out of his pocket. Stay here. Drink that juice, he pointed to the pouch on the table. I'm making a call. Who are you calling? Izuku sniffled, wiping his nose on his sleeve. Aizawa dialed a number, his eyes darkening. I'm calling Yagi. He and I are going to have a very long, very unpleasant conversation about the difference between a symbol and a soldier. Aizawa looked back at Izuku, and for the first time, his expression softened into something resembling comfort. You aren't alone in this anymore, Midoriya. I won't let you be. That's a promise. As Aizawa stepped into a hallway to make the call, Izuku felt the crushing weight on his chest lighten. It wasn't gone. The danger was still there, the villain was still out there. But for the first time since the beach park, since eating the hare, since accepting the torch, Izuku didn't feel like he was holding up the sky by himself. He took a sip of the juice. It was apple. It tasted sweet. Outside the window, the moon shone down on the dorms, no longer a spotlight of judgment, but a beacon. The cracks in the porcelain remained, but now, someone was there to help apply the gold. The silence in Shota Aizawa's apartment was not peaceful. It was heavy, pressurized, like the air inside a submarine diving past its safety limit. Izuku Midoriya sat on the edge of the low chair, his hands clamped between his knees to stop them from shaking. He stared at the condensation sliding down the plastic front of the apple juice pouch Aizawa had given him. He hadn't taken another sip. His throat felt like it had been scrubbed with sandpaper. Across the room, Aizawa stood by the window. He hadn't looked at Izuku since making the phone call. He was staring out at the campus, his posture rigid. The usual slouch was gone. In its place was the coiled tension of a predator waiting for something to breach the perimeter. I'm coming immediately. That had been All Might's voice on the other end of the line. It had sounded terrified. Izuku's mind was racing, a hamster wheel of anxiety spinning at supersonic speeds. Did I ruin everything? All Might trusted me. He chose me out of everyone in the world. He told me the secret was essential to the peace. If people know, they'll panic. If the villains know, they'll come for me even harder. Does Aizawa-sensei hate me now? Does he think I'm a fraud? He looked up at his teacher's back. Sensei. Save your breath, Midoriya, Aizawa said, cutting him off without turning around. His voice wasn't angry, but it was incredibly flat. You've been hyperventilating for 10 minutes. If you pass out, it's just more paperwork for me. Drink the juice. Raising your blood sugar is the logical first step to handling shock. Izuku fumbled with the straw and took a sip. The sweetness was jarring against the bitter taste of bile in his mouth. I didn't mean to betray him, Izuku whispered. Aizawa turned then. His dark eyes, usually half-lidded and bored, were wide awake. Betrayal implies malice. You came to a pro-hero because you were losing control of a dangerous quirk. That isn't betrayal, Midoriya. That is survival. The fact that you think of it as betrayal is the problem. Before Izuku could respond, a heavy knock rattled the door. It wasn't the polite tap of a visitor. It was the frantic pounding of a man in a panic. Aizawa didn't rush. He walked to the door with deliberate slowness, unlocked the deadbolt, and pulled it open. Toshinori Yagi stood in the hallway. He was in his civilian clothes, baggy cargo pants and a white t-shirt that hung loosely off his emaciated frame. He was breathing hard, as if he had run all the way from the teacher's dorms. His sunken blue eyes darted immediately past Aizawa, locking onto Izuku. Young Midoriya! Yagi gasped, stepping forward. Are you alright? Aizawa said it was an emergency. Are you hurt? The sheer concern in his voice made Izuku's chest ache. This man loved him. He knew that. All Might wasn't cruel. He was just overwhelming. I'm okay, All Might, Izuku managed to squeak. Aizawa stepped into Yagi's path, blocking him from rushing to the student. He's physically stable, Yagi. Mentally? That's another debate. Come inside. Yagi blinked, looking up at Aizawa. Aizawa-kun? What is going on? Inside, Aizawa repeated. And locked the door. Yagi entered, the atmosphere shifting instantly. If Aizawa was a storm cloud, Yagi was a dying sun, still warm, but flickering. He locked the door and turned to face them, his large hands wringing together nervously. Midoriya, Yagi said softly. You look pale. Sit down, Aizawa commanded, pointing to the other chair. He remained standing, leaning against the wall, crossing his arms over his chest. He looked between the former symbol of peace and the trembling student. Midoriya has something to tell you, Aizawa said. Or rather, he has something to explain to me, and you are going to sit there and listen to confirm the details. Because if I find out you've been lying to the faculty about the nature of a student's safety, I will have your teaching license revoked before sunrise. Retired symbol or not? Yagi stiffened. Aizawa, please. There are matters of national security. There is a child crying in my apartment because he thinks his quirk is going to kill him, Aizawa snapped, his voice rising for the first time. Security be damned. Logic dictates we solve the immediate threat. Talk, Midoriya. Izuku flinched at the tone, but he saw the look Aizawa shot him. It was a look of support. I'm doing the talking so you don't have to fight him alone. Izuku took a deep breath. He looked at All Might. I told him, All Might. I had to. Yagi's face fell. He slumped into the chair, looking suddenly very old. I see. The pressure was too much? It's not just the pressure, Izuku said, finding his voice. He sat up straighter. It's the quirk itself. It's changing. Changing? Yagi frowned. Aizawa-sensei, Izuku turned to his homeroom teacher. You know my quirk is super strength. That I break my bones because my body can't handle the output. I am painfully aware, Aizawa said dryly. That's because, it's not my quirk, Izuku said. The words hung in the air. I was born quirkless. Aizawa's eyebrows shot up. He didn't interrupt, but his eyes narrowed, processing the data. The diagnosis of the toe joint, the lack of manifestation until age 15, the lack of instinctive control, it all clicked into place. I met All Might the day of the sludge villain incident, Izuku continued. He saw something in me. He told me his quirk, one for all, can be passed down. Like a torch. One person cultivates the power, then hands it to the next. He chose me to be the ninth holder. Aizawa looked at Yagi. You gave a stockpile quirk that has been accumulating energy for 8 generations to a 15-year-old boy with no prior quirk conditioning? His body was ready. Yagi defended weakly. He cleaned the beach park. He trained for 10 months. 10 months, Aizawa repeated, his voice dripping with incredulity. To hold the power that leveled half of Kamino Ward. Continue, Midoriya. I ate his hair, Izuku mumbled. Aizawa paused. I'm sorry, what? To transfer the DNA. I ate a strand of his hair. Aizawa closed his eyes and pinched the bridge of his nose. I don't get paid enough for this. Go on. Since then, I've been trying to master it, Izuku said. But recently, ever since Kamino, it feels different. It's angry. Or restless. Today, in the gym, when I slipped? It wasn't just a slip. Black energy came out of my arm. It felt like whips. It threw me off balance. Yagi sat up, alarmed. Black energy? That hasn't happened before. I never had black energy. I know, Izuku said, his voice trembling again. And I have nightmares. I see the other holders. I see all for one. They talk to me. It feels like the quirk is waking up, and I'm scared that if I don't get help, I'm going to hurt someone. Or it's going to tear me apart. He looked at Aizawa. That's why I came. All Might is the greatest hero, but he mastered this instantly. He doesn't know what it's like to be afraid of the power. You cancel quirks, Sensei. You understand how they work fundamentally. I thought maybe you could help me figure out the logic of it. The room fell silent again. The confession was out. The weight was shared. Aizawa uncrossed his arms. He walked over to the small kitchenette and poured himself a glass of water. He drank it slowly, buying time to process the sheer insanity of what he had just heard. Quirk inheritance. A secret war spanning generations. A quirkless student given the nuclear codes. He set the glass down with a clink. He turned to Yagi. You are an idiot, Aizawa stated. Yagi flinched. Aizawa-kun, you must understand. The symbol of peace is a deterrent. If the world knows the power is transferable, that it can be stolen or given, the chaos would be. I don't care about the world right now, Aizawa cut him off, his voice icy. I care about my student. You looked at a child who idolized you, who would jump off a building if you asked him to, and you burdened him with a legacy that destroyed your own body. And then you told him to hide it from the people whose job it is to keep him alive. Aizawa walked closer to Yagi, looming over the sitting man. Do you know why I expelled my entire class last year, Yagi? Yagi looked down. Because they weren't ready. Because they were reckless. Because they thought being a hero was a game. But Midoriya? Aizawa pointed at Izuku. He isn't reckless for glory. He is reckless because you taught him that his life is secondary to the mission. You taught him that breaking his bones is an acceptable price for victory. You taught him that suffering in silence is what heroes do. I wanted him to be the next symbol. Yagi argued, a desperate edge to his voice. He has the heart. You saw him at the USJ. You saw him save young Bakugo. I saw a child terrified and acting on instinct. Aizawa slammed his hand on the table, making both Izuku and Yagi jump. He is a freshman in high school. He is not a symbol. He is a teenager who likes hero analysis and Katsudon. He is not you, All Might. And trying to mold him into a carbon copy of yourself is going to get him killed. Aizawa took a breath, reining in his temper. He looked at Izuku, who was watching with wide, watery eyes. Midoriya says the quirk is changing? That means your experience with it is now obsolete. You cannot teach him how to control something you never possessed. By keeping this between the two of you, you have created a closed loop of ignorance. It is illogical. It is dangerous. And it stops tonight. Yagi looked at his hands, the hands that had failed to protect his successor from the mental burden. I didn't want him to be treated differently. I didn't want him to be a target. He is already a target, Aizawa said brutally. Shigaraki wants him dead. Muscular targeted him. The League knows something makes him special. The only people who were in the dark were the ones who could actually help him maximize his potential. Aizawa sighed, the anger draining away to reveal exhaustion. He rubbed the back of his neck. From this moment on, the circle of secrecy expands. That is non-negotiable. Yagi looked up. Who are you thinking? Nizu, obviously, Aizawa listed. He probably already suspects, knowing that rat. Recovery Girl needs the full medical history, not just the sanitized version. And, we need to look at his tactical support. Aizawa turned to Izuku. Midoriya. Why yes, sensei? This black energy. It manifested when you were stressed? Yes. I was trying to force a higher percentage. I was panic thinking about being next. Aizawa nodded. It sounds like a secondary manifestation. If this quirk stockpiles power, it is logical to assume it stockpiles the biological quirk factors of previous users. You aren't just accessing the raw strength anymore. You are unlocking their quirks. Izuku's jaw dropped. Unlocking 6 other quirks? Yagi looked horrified. 6? I barely managed 1, which is why you are ill-equipped to handle this alone, Aizawa said. He grabbed a notepad and a pen from his desk. He sat down and clicked the pen. Here is the new logic, Aizawa declared, his teacher mode fully engaged. Rule 1, no more secrets between us. If your toe twitches wrong, you tell me. If you have a nightmare, you text me. I don't care if it's 4 a.m. Izuku nodded vigorously. Yes, sensei. Rule 2, Yagi, you are stepping back from the symbol training. You are his quirk counselor, not his PR manager. You will focus on the history of the holders. Find out who they were. Find out what their quirks were. If Midoriya is about to manifest pyrokinesis or flotation, we need to know before he sets the dorms on fire. I will contact Gran Torino, Yagi said, nodding. He might know more about Nana's predecessor. Rule 3, Aizawa continued, writing furiously. We establish a tactical support circle. Midoriya, you rely heavily on your classmates. Specifically, the loud blonde one, the engine, and the gravity girl. They are your squad. Kaken, Ida-kun, and Uraraka-san, Izuku supplied. Do they know? Aizawa asked. Kaken suspects something. He knows I got the power from someone, but he doesn't know the full truth about All for One. The others don't know anything. Aizawa tapped the pen on his chin. Bakugo is sharp. If he suspects, he's a liability until he's brought into the fold. If he feels excluded, he becomes volatile. If he's included, his competitive drive becomes a controlled asset. Aizawa looked Izuku in the eye. You need to tell him the full truth. And the other two, eventually. You cannot lead a team if you are hiding your primary weapon from them. Trust is a tactical advantage. Izuku swallowed hard. Telling Katsuki everything? The whole truth about the burden? He might yell. Let him yell, Aizawa said. Then tell him to get over it and help you train. He wants to be number one? Fine. Then he needs to help the only person who can challenge him get stronger. Use his ego against him. That's extremely logical, Izuku admitted. As for the public, Aizawa said, glancing at Yagi. We keep the lid on tight. The world isn't ready to know All Might is gone for good, and they certainly aren't ready to know a 15-year-old is the new vessel. We maintain the superpower quirk registry. But inside UA? You are no longer hiding. Aizawa tore the sheet off the notepad and handed it to Izuku. It was a list of appointment times: Monday, Wednesday, Friday mornings. You come to me for quirk counseling. We will work on control. Not strength, control. I will erase your quirk repeatedly so you can learn the feeling of the switch. We will analyze this black whip energy in a controlled environment. Izuku took the paper. He looked at the handwriting, sharp, jagged, but clear. For the first time in months, the static noise in his head quieted down. The crushing expectation of being the next All Might was still there, but Aizawa had just built a scaffolding around it. He wasn't asking Izuku to hold it up alone anymore. Thank you, Sensei, Izuku said, his voice thick with emotion. Aizawa stood up and walked to the door, unlocking it. Don't thank me. Just don't die. That's all I ask. He opened the door. Yagi, stay. We have more to discuss regarding the curriculum. Midoriya, go back to the dorms. It's past curfew, but I'll alert the system so the bots don't stop you. Izuku stood up. His legs felt a little wobbly, but not from fear this time. From relief. He walked past All Might. The skeletal man looked up, his eyes full of regret. Young Midoriya, Yagi said. I am sorry. Aizawa is right. I was looking at the horizon, not at the person standing next to me. Izuku stopped. He impulsively hugged the frail man. It's okay, All Might. We're still learning. Both of us. Yagi stiffened, then hugged him back, gently patting his back. Go on, my boy. Rest. The walk back to the Heights Alliance dorms was surreal. The campus was bathed in the silver glow of the moon. The crickets were louder now. The cool air felt good against Izuku's flushed skin. He felt lighter. Physically lighter. It was as if the gravity around him had decreased. He thought about what Aizawa had said. It is illogical to fight a war alone. It made so much sense. Why had he been so blind? He had been so obsessed with proving he was worthy, proving he could be like All Might, that he had forgotten that even All Might had sidekicks. Even All Might had Sir Night Eye, and Gran Torino, and Detective Sakachi. Izuku looked at his hand. He clenched it into a fist. One for all. Power for everyone. The name itself implied community. It wasn't one for one. It was power cultivated by many, for the sake of many. By keeping it to himself, he was fighting the nature of the quirk. He reached the front steps of the 1A dormitory. The lights in the common room were off. Everyone must have gone to bed. He opened the door quietly, slipping off his slippers in the genkan. He crept across the darkened common room, careful not to bump into the sofas. You're late. The voice cut through the darkness like a knife. Izuku froze. Sitting on one of the sofas, barely visible in the shadows except for the glow of the red standby light on the TV, was Katsuki Bakugo. He wasn't lounging this time. He was sitting on the edge of the cushion, elbows on his knees, hands clasped. He turned his head slowly. His red eyes seemed to glow in the dark. Keikaken, Izuku stammered. I was with Aizawa-sensei. I know, Bakugo said. His voice was dangerously low. I saw you leave. You didn't have shoes on. You looked like you were gonna puke. Bakugo stood up and walked around the sofa. He stopped a few feet from Izuku. He didn't have his usual scowl. His face was blank, unreadable, which was infinitely worse. You went to the teacher's dorms, Bakugo stated. You were gone for over an hour. And now you come back looking like you just cried your eyes out. It was just counseling, Izuku tried. Bullshit, Bakugo spat. Don't lie to me, Deku. Not after Kamino. Not after everything. Bakugo took a step closer. I asked you before? About your quirk. You gave me some half-assed answer about borrowed power. But I saw All Might. I saw that shriveled form. I saw how he pointed at the camera. At you. Bakugo's voice cracked slightly. You have his quirk, don't you? The question hung in the air. In the past, Izuku would have panicked. He would have stuttered out a denial. He would have run away to his room and locked the door. But Aizawa's words echoed in his mind. Trust is a tactical advantage. Let him yell. Izuku looked at his childhood friend. He saw the anger, yes, but underneath it, he saw the confusion. Bakugo was smart. He was putting the pieces together, but the picture he was building was incomplete and terrifying. He felt left behind. He felt like the world was moving without him. If Izuku lied now, the rift between them would never heal. They would never be the wonder duo. They would just be strangers with a shared history of pain. Izuku took a deep breath. He stopped trembling. He stood his ground. Yes, Izuku said clearly. Bakugo's eyes widened. He hadn't expected the admission. He took a half-step back. But it's more than that, Kaken, Izuku continued, his voice steadying. It's not just a power boost. It's a burden. And I almost broke under it tonight. That's why I went to Aizawa. Bakugo stared at him. You told Aizawa? Yes. And All Might was there, so the teachers know? And I'm the only one left in the dark like a damn extra? Bakugo's hands started to smoke, small pops of nitroglycerin sparking. I'm telling you now, Izuku said. I'm done hiding it from you. Because I can't do this alone. I can't beat you, and I can't save everyone, if I'm constantly looking over my shoulder. Izuku looked straight into the crimson eyes. I need your help, Katsuki. He used his given name. Not Kaken. The sparks on Bakugo's palms died out. He looked stunned. Izuku Midoriya, the pebble on the side of the road, was asking for help, not begging for mercy, not asking to be saved, but asking for help to handle a power that was too big for one person. You! Bakugo gritted his teeth. You damn nerd. I'm serious, Izuku said. I'll tell you everything. How it works. Why All Might chose me. The other quirks inside it. Other quirks? Bakugo shouted, then quickly clamped a hand over his mouth, glancing at the stairs to make sure he hadn't woken Ida. He lowered his voice to a furious hiss. What do you mean, other quirks? Come outside, Izuku said, gesturing to the door. We can't talk here. Aizawa-sensei gave me permission to be up. Let's go. Bakugo stared at him for a long moment. He was searching for any sign of deception, any sign of the old, weak Deku. He didn't find it. He found a rival who was finally acknowledging him as an equal. Fine, Bakugo scoffed, shoving his hands into his pockets. But you better not leave a single detail out, or I'll kill you. I won't, Izuku promised. They walked out the door together, into the cool night. The secrets were crumbling. The porcelain facade was breaking. But what was emerging underneath was something stronger. Something forged in honesty. As they walked toward the training grounds, Izuku began to speak. He started from the beginning, the sludge villain, the rooftop, the question. Can I be a hero? And for the first time in his life, Katsuki Bakugo shut up and listened. The next morning, the sun rose over a changed Class 1A, though only a few people knew it. In the faculty meeting room, Aizawa slapped a thick file onto the table in front of Principal Nizu. We have a problem, Aizawa announced to the mouse, Vlad King, and Midnight. And a solution. But mostly a problem. We need to restructure the first-year heroics curriculum immediately. Nizu picked up the file, his black eyes glinting. Oh? Does this have to do with the rather loud shouting match I heard from your apartment last night involving our retired number one? It does, Aizawa said, pouring himself coffee. Yagi is incompetent at teaching. I'm taking over Midoriya's quirk development personally. And I'm authorizing a specialized support unit within Class 1A. Midnight raised an eyebrow. A support unit? For one student? Isn't that favoritism? It's logic, Aizawa said, taking a sip of the dark roast. Because if we don't, the kid is going to explode. And I'd prefer to keep my dorm intact. Back at the Heights Alliance, Izuku walked into the kitchen. He was tired, He had stayed up until 2 a.m. talking to Bakugo. There had been yelling. There had been a small scuffle. There had been tears, mostly Izuku's, though Bakugo had looked suspiciously glossy-eyed when Izuku described All Might's injury. But the air was clear. Bakugo was already there, chopping vegetables for breakfast with aggressive precision. "Morning, Kaken," Izuku said. Bakugo didn't look up. "Don't talk to me, nerd. You look like hell. Eat some protein." He slid a plate of eggs across the counter. It slid perfectly, stopping right in front of Izuku. Izuku blinked. He looked at the eggs. He looked at Bakugo. "Thanks. Shut up and eat. We're sparring later. If you use that black whip thing and trip over your own feet again, I'm blasting you into orbit." "Right." Izuku smiled. A real smile. Uraraka and Ida walked in a moment later, yawning. "Good morning, Deku-kun." "Bakugo-kun." Uraraka chirped. "Morning," Izuku said. He looked at his two best friends. I have to tell them too, he thought. Soon. Aizawa-sensei is right. They deserve to know. But for now, he ate his eggs. He watched Bakugo yell at Kaminari for touching the toaster wrong. He listened to Ida lecture about proper nutrition. The weight was still there. One for All was still a terrifying ocean of power. But Izuku wasn't treading water alone anymore. He had a lifeline. He had a squad. And he had a teacher who chose logic over legacy. Izuku took a bite of his breakfast. It tasted like strength. The air in Gym Gamma was stagnant, smelling of concrete dust and ozone. It was 6 a.m. on a Wednesday, a time usually reserved for sleep or a light jog, not the kind of quirk counseling that felt more like a bomb disposal operation. Izuku Midoriya stood in the center of a reinforced sparring ring. He was shirtless, his scars mapping the history of his reckless first year at UA. His chest heaved. "Again," Shota Aizawa said. Aizawa stood 10 feet away, goggles around his neck, his eyes dry and bloodshot but unblinking. Next to him stood Toshinori Yagi, clutching a clipboard like a shield, looking torn between pride and terror. "Right," Izuku breathed. He closed his eyes. He didn't visualize the egg in the microwave. That metaphor was dead. It was too volatile, too prone to mess. He visualized the circuit board. A complex, humming grid of energy. He was the conductor, one for all. Full cowling. 5%. The green lightning flickered across his skin, familiar and warm. "Hold it there," Aizawa commanded. "Now. Introduce the stressor. Recall the feeling from the other day." The slip. Izuku gritted his teeth. He let his mind wander to the dark places he usually tried to wall off. He thought about the league. He thought about Shigaraki's hand on his neck at the mall. He thought about the crushing weight of the expectation that he had to be the next All Might. "You're not ready. You're too slow. You're going to fail everyone." The hum of One for All changed pitch. It went from a major key to a dissonant minor. Deep inside the core of the power, something stirred. It wasn't the warm light. It was cold, oily, and furious. "Black Whip." A tendril of black energy shot out from his right elbow, lashing wildly like a downed power line. "Focus!" Aizawa barked. Izuku tried to grab the energy with his mind, to wrestle it back into the circuit. "It's too much. It's slippery." The black tendril whipped around, smashing into the concrete floor, cracking it. It recoiled and aimed for Izuku's own face. Flash. Suddenly, the power vanished. The lightning died. The black whip dissolved into smoke. Izuku stumbled forward, his knees hitting the ground as the sudden loss of support sent him off balance. He looked up. Aizawa's hair was floating, his eyes glowing red. "Erasure. You lost the handle at 7.4 seconds, Aizawa said, dropping his quirk and letting his hair fall. He made a note on his own pad. "Better than Monday's 3 seconds, but you're still reacting to the power rather than commanding it. It feels angry," Izuku panted, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It doesn't feel like the super strength. The strength feels like water. This feels like tar." "It is likely a quirk that relies on emotion," Yagi chimed in, stepping forward. He looked thoughtful. "The fifth user. Daigoro Banjo. He was a funky man. High energy. If this is his quirk, Black Whip, it might respond to high-intensity emotions. Anger. Fear. determination. Which means, Aizawa said, capping his pen, that if you panic in the field, this thing comes out and strangles you or your teammates. Until you can regulate your emotional state, you are forbidden from accessing it intentionally. If it starts to manifest, you clamp down. You treat it like a muscle spasm. Izuku nodded, standing up. Yes, sensei. Aizawa looked at the boy. Go shower. You have English in an hour. And Midoriya? Yes? You look less like you're about to explode today. Keep it up. Izuku managed a small smile. I talked to Kaken. Like you said? Aizawa's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of approval in his eyes. Good. Then Phase 2 begins today. The cafeteria was buzzing with the usual lunchtime chaos. The smell of curry and fried pork cutlet filled the air. Izuku carried his tray, scanning the tables. Usually, this was a moment of simple social routine. Today, it felt like entering a minefield. He saw the usual table. Uraraka was waving at him, Ida was meticulously arranging his napkins, and Todoroki was eating soba in silence. But his eyes drifted to the other side of the room. Bakugo sat with Kirishima, Kaminari, and Sero. Bakugo was eating with a ferocity that suggested the food had personally offended him. Since their talk 2 nights ago, the screaming match under the stars, the revelation of the secrets, the uneasy truce, they hadn't really spoken in public. Bakugo had kept his distance, watching Izuku with those sharp, analytical red eyes. Izuku walked over to his friends and sat down. Deku-kun. You look exhausted, Uraraka noted immediately. Was Aizawa-sensei working you hard again? Yeah, Izuku said, stabbing a piece of broccoli. Just quirk counseling. Trying to get better control. It is admirable that the faculty is taking a specialized interest. Ida said, chopping the air. With the provisional license exam coming up, refining our quirks is paramount. Though I do wonder why you need separate sessions from the class. Izuku froze. Lying. He hated lying to them. Every time he did, it felt like another brick in the wall he had built between himself and the people who had supported him since day one. It's complicated, Izuku murmured. Is it because your quirk breaks your bones? Todoroki asked bluntly. Shoto. Uraraka hissed. Don't be so direct. It's a valid medical concern, Todoroki shrugged. Izuku looked at them. Uraraka, who had floated him when he tripped on the first day. Ida, who had risked his life and career in Hosu because he was hurting. They were his best friends, and they were the only ones at the table who didn't know the truth. Even Todoroki had his theories, even if they were wrong, and Bakugo knew everything. Trust is a tactical advantage, Aizawa had said. You cannot lead a team if you are hiding your primary weapon. Izuku looked across the room again. Bakugo caught his eye. The blonde raised an eyebrow, then jerked his head imperceptibly toward Ida and Uraraka. It was a challenge. Are you going to tell them, or are you going to keep being a cowardly nerd? Izuku put his chopsticks down. Uraraka-san. Ida-kun, Izuku said. His voice was quiet but serious enough that both of them stopped eating immediately. Even Todoroki paused mid-slurp. I need to talk to you guys. Tonight. In my room. It's really important. Uraraka's eyes widened. Is everything okay? Are you in trouble? No. Well, no more than usual. But there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you a long time ago. Ida adjusted his glasses, his expression shifting from class rep to concerned friend. If it is serious, we will be there. 7 p.m.? 7 p.m., Izuku confirmed. He looked at Todoroki. Todoroki-kun, you should come too. If you want, Todoroki blinked. Okay. The rest of lunch passed in a blur. Izuku felt the weight in his pocket where his phone was. He had texted All Might earlier. I'm telling the squad tonight. All Might had replied with a simple, good luck, my boy. Together is better. At 7 p.m. sharp, there was a knock on Izuku's door. Izuku opened it to reveal Ida, Uraraka, and Todoroki. They filed in, looking around the room filled with All Might merchandise. Usually, they would tease him about the obsessive collection, but the tension in the air stifled any jokes. They sat on the floor in a circle. Izuku sat on his bed, looking down at them. So Uraraka started, clutching her knees. What's up, Deku-kun? You're scaring us a little. Izuku took a deep breath. He had rehearsed this in his head 1,000 times, but now that the moment was here, the script vanished. I didn't want to lie to you, Izuku began. Please know that. I wanted to tell you from the start. But I was told I couldn't. For your safety. For everyone's safety. Told by who? Ida asked. All Might. The three friends exchanged glances. My quirk, Izuku said, holding up his hand and looking at the scars. Superpower. That's what it says on the registry. But that's not its name. And I wasn't born with it. He saw the confusion on their faces. I was born quirkless, Izuku said softly. The silence that followed was deafening. Uraraka gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Ida went rigid. Todoroki just leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Quirkless? Uraraka whispered. But, the entrance exam, the ball throw. It was given to me, Izuku explained. By All Might. On the day of the exam. The quirk is called One for All. It's a power that stockpiles energy and passes it from one person to the next. All Might was the 8th holder. I am the 9th. He told them everything. He told them about the training on the beach. He told them about eating the hare, which elicited a horrified gag from Uraraka. He told them about the true nature of All for One. He told them why All Might had really retired, not just because of the injury, but because he had passed the torch. He told them about the danger. That he was being hunted. That being close to him meant being in the crosshairs of the worst villains in history. When he finished, the room was silent. The clock on the wall ticked loudly. Izuku looked at his hands, afraid to look up. Afraid to see anger. Afraid to see rejection. You were quirkless? It was Uraraka who spoke first. Her voice was trembling. Izuku looked up. She wasn't angry. She was crying. All that time, she said, tears spilling over? When everyone made fun of you, when you broke your bones again and again, you were just learning? You were holding all that pressure by yourself? I had All Might, Izuku said weakly. All Might is a teacher. Uraraka cried, wiping her eyes furiously. He's an adult. You're just Izuku. We're your friends. Why didn't you trust us? I did trust you. Izuku insisted. I didn't want you to get hurt because of me. That is illogical, Ida said. His voice was thick, heavy with emotion. He stood up, towering over the room. His fists were clenched at his sides. Ida-kun? In Hosu, Ida said, his voice shaking. I sought vengeance. I was blind. And you came for me. You and Todoroki came for me. You risked your lives to save me from Stain. You carried my burden when I was too weak to carry it myself. Ida looked down at Izuku, his eyes shimmering behind his glasses. Do you think so little of me, Midoriya? Do you think I am so fragile that I cannot help you carry yours? No. Izuku stood up. No, Ida, never. You're the strongest person I know. Then let us be strong for you. Ida shouted, a rare break in his composure. We are aspiring heroes. If we cannot even support our friend, what kind of heroes will we be? Todoroki let out a long breath. So, my theory about you being All Might's secret love child was incorrect. The tension in the room snapped. Uraraka let out a wet, hysterical laugh. Izuku stared at Todoroki, bewildered. That's what you took from this? Izuku asked. It's a lot to process, Todoroki admitted, standing up as well. He looked at Izuku with a newfound respect. But it explains everything. The similarity in quirks. The mentorship. The reason you destroy your body to save others. Todoroki walked over and placed a hand on Izuku's shoulder. I know what it's like to have a destiny forced on you by a powerful father figure, Todoroki said quietly. I know the weight of legacy. You don't have to do it alone, Midoriya. We're here, Todoroki-kun. Uraraka launched herself at them, wrapping her arms around Izuku and pulling Ida into the hug. It was a messy, tearful group hug in the middle of a dorm room filled with merchandise of the man who had started it all. We're the Deku squad, Uraraka sniffled into Izuku's shoulder. That means we protect Deku. That's the rule now. We need a better name, Todoroki mumbled from the edge of the hug. Support circle, Ida corrected, ever the organizer, though he was patting Izuku's back with excessive force. We shall form a phalanx around you. If villains want the one for all, they will have to go through the engines, the gravity, and the ice and fire first, Izuku cried. He couldn't help it. The dam that Aizawa had cracked open the night before had fully burst. But these weren't tears of fear. They were tears of sheer, unadulterated relief. He wasn't the lone pillar. He was part of a foundation. The dynamic of Class 1A shifted the next day. It wasn't obvious to everyone, but to those paying attention, the change was tectonic. During Hero Basic Training, the class was preparing for the provisional license exam. They were developing their ultimate moves. Izuku was in Gym Beta, wearing his costume, the Gamma version with the iron saws and the arm braces Mei Hatsum had built. He was trying to refine his shoot style. He kicked a concrete pillar. Impact. He spun and kicked again. Impact. But it felt clumsy. His movements were telegraphed. He was strong, yes, but he moved like someone who was thinking about every step. You look like a drunk ballerina. An explosion blasted the air next to Izuku's ear. He ducked instinctively, rolling away and springing to his feet. Bakugo stood there, smoke curling from his gauntlets. He was grinning, but it was that feral, competitive grin. Kaken? Izuku straightened up. I'm training. You call that training? Bakugo scoffed. You're just kicking rocks. You have zero form. You're trying to copy Ida's speed, but you don't have engines. You have springs. Bakugo launched himself forward. Defend yourself. Izuku brought his arms up. Habit. Wrong. Bakugo shouted, twisting midair and blasting himself behind Izuku. He delivered a swift kick to Izuku's back. Izuku stumbled. Ow. What was that for? You're using your legs now, right? Bakugo landed and circled him like a shark. Then why are you guarding like a boxer? Your center of gravity is all over the place. If you want to use shoot style, you have to flow. You're too rigid. Izuku blinked. Flow? Don't just kick, Bakugo lectured, demonstrating a spin. Use the momentum of the kick to move into the next position. You're stopping after every hit to check if you did it right. Stop thinking. Just move, Bakugo blasted forward again. Right hook. Izuku dodged. He tried to counter with a high kick. Bakugo ducked under it effortlessly. Too slow. You're telegraphing. Look at your hips. From the observation deck, Aizawa and All Might watched. Young Bakugo is helping him? All Might whispered, adjusting his grip on the railing. In his own aggressive way? Bakugo is a perfectionist, Aizawa noted, a small smirk playing on his lips. He hates incompetence. Now that he knows Midoriya is carrying a legacy that rivals his own ambition, he refuses to let Midoriya be a subpar rival. He's raising the bar. Back on the floor, the sparring intensified. Ida? Round face. Bakugo shouted without looking away from Izuku. Get your asses over here. Ida and Uraraka, who were practicing nearby, looked over. They hesitated, then ran over. What is it, Bakugo-kun? Ida asked. You two know the secret now, right? Bakugo growled, blocking a kick from Izuku. Don't play dumb. Deku's face is an open book. Ida straightened. We are aware of the situation, yes. Good. Then stop playing patty cake and help me fix him, Bakugo ordered. Four Eyes, your kicks are linear. Teach him how to chamber his legs so he doesn't tear a groin muscle. Round face, float some debris. Make him aim for moving targets while I try to blow him up. Are you coordinating a training regimen? Uraraka asked, stunned. I am optimizing the asset. Bakugo yelled, blasting a rock toward Izuku. Now move! And just like that, the support circle went live. For the next hour, Gym Beta became a hellscape of specialized training. Uraraka floated heavy cement blocks, sending them drifting through the air. Izuku had to leap from block to block using full cowling. While airborne, he had to dodge Bakugo's precision blasts. And when he landed, Ida was there, sparring with him, correcting his kick angles. Keep your guard up while kicking, Ida instructed, blocking Izuku's shin with his armored forearm. Use your arms for balance and protection. Right. Izuku gasped, sweat pouring down his face. Don't look at your feet. Bakugo screamed from above. Look at the enemy. It was grueling. It was chaotic. But for the first time, Izuku felt a rhythm. He wasn't mimicking All Might. He wasn't trying to be a solo act. He was reacting to Ida, trusting Uraraka's floating platforms, and matching Bakugo's intensity. He bounced off a floating rock, spun, and delivered a smash that shattered a target drone Bakugo had tossed into the air. Manchester smash! Izuku landed in a crouch, breathing hard. The air crackled with green electricity. Bakugo landed next to him. He didn't offer a hand, but he didn't attack. He wiped sweat from his chin. Less crappy, Bakugo muttered. But your landing still sucks. I'm working on it, Izuku grinned. Ida and Uraraka ran over. That was amazing, Deku-kun. Uraraka cheered. You moved so fast. The integration of your mobility with the aerial obstacles was highly effective, Ida praised. Though we must ensure you do not overexert your ligaments. Izuku looked at them. His rivals. His friends. His team. Thanks, guys, Izuku said. Really. A week later, the day of the provisional license exam arrived. The National Takoba Arena was massive, filled to the brim with 1,540 students from hero schools across the country. The tension was palpable. Only 100 would pass. Class 1A stood in a huddle. In the original timeline, they were nervous, scattered, waiting for instructions. This time, the vibe was different. Listen up, Aizawa said before they entered the venue. This exam is designed to weed out those who cannot function under pressure. They will try to separate you. They will try to crush the weakest link. He looked at Izuku. Midoriya. Yes, sensei. You are the priority target. Not just because of that, but because UA is always the target. Do not play the hero. Play the objective. Understood. Inside the arena, the first test began. The crushing of UA tradition. As soon as the buzzer sounded, students from other schools turned their eyes toward Class 1A. Balls glowed, quirks activated. A tidal wave of attacks was incoming. They're coming! Mineta screamed. Usually, Izuku would have panicked, or tried to formulate a complex plan on the fly while muttering. This time, Ida stepped forward. Formation Delta. Ida bellowed. Without hesitation, the class moved. They had practiced this. Momo Yaoyorozu created a row of shields. Tokoyami's dark shadow expanded to cover the flank. But the core was different. Izuku stood in the center. To his left was Uraraka. To his right was Ida. And hovering directly above them, propelled by explosions, was Bakugo. A massive vibration shook the ground. Yoshindo from Ketsubutsu Academy used his vibrate quirk to shatter the ground, trying to split them up. Scatter and regroup. Shindo yelled. The ground cracked. Class 1A was forced to split into smaller groups. Izuku found himself isolated on a jutting island of rock. Immediately, students from Seijin High School surrounded him. We got one! A student in a ninja costume shouted. It's the green-haired one. Take him out. 10 students rushed him. Izuku dropped into a low stance. Shoot style. But before he could move, a pink blur shot past him. Release. Uraraka touched 5 of the attackers in rapid succession as she ran past them, making them float helplessly into the air. Recipro burst. Ida was a blur of silver, rushing in from the flank. He kicked 3 students, knocking their targets, causing them to fail instantly. Izuku didn't waste the opening. He leaped, bouncing off the floating students, apologizing as he did so, and aimed a Delaware Smash Air Force at the remaining 2. Pow! The wind pressure knocked them back, their targets lighting up red. The dust settled. Izuku, Uraraka, and Ida stood back to back to back. Are you okay, Deku? Uraraka asked, fists raised. Clear, Izuku said, scanning the perimeter. Thanks for the cover, Uraraka-san. We told you, Ida said, adjusting his glasses which glinted dangerously. We are the Phalanx. From above, a massive explosion rocked the arena. Bakugo was engaged with 2 other students, cackling maniacally. Die, extras! He blasted a student toward Izuku's group. Deku! Catch! Bakugo yelled. Izuku didn't hesitate. He jumped up, caught the flying student with Black Whip, just a tiny strand, controlled, used like a lasso, spun him around to disorient him, and tagged his target. You're out! Izuku said. Bakugo landed nearby. Don't steal my kill, nerd. You threw him at me. I was passing. It's called teamwork, look it up. Across the battlefield, Inasa Yorashi of Shiketsu High was watching. He controlled the wind, blowing students away with ease. He had a burning hatred for Todoroki, and by extension Yue. He narrowed his eyes at the green-haired boy. Inasa had expected arrogance. He had expected the cold, aloof power he saw in Todoroki, but what he saw was strange. The boy with the power to shatter the ground wasn't dominating the field alone. He was coordinating. He was acting as a pivot point for the blonde explosion boy, the engine boy, and the gravity girl. They moved like a single organism. Passion! Inasa yelled, summoning a tornado. Let's see if your friendship can withstand this. He launched a gale toward Team Deku. Todoroki! Izuku yelled into his comms earpiece, another suggestion by Aizawa. Actual tactical comms for the squad. Need ice wall, 3 o'clock. Todoroki, who was engaging a different group nearby, didn't ask questions. He stomped his right foot. A massive glacier of ice shot up, intercepting Inasa's wind. The wind howled against the ice, but the wall held. Izuku turned to his team. We need to neutralize the wind user. He's going to make it impossible for the others to pass. Plan? Bakugo demanded. Bakugo, provide vertical distraction. Create smoke. Uraraka, make Ida float. Ida, use the smoke cover to get close. I'll draw his fire. I'm not a decoy, I'm the main event. Bakugo argued, but he was already blasting into the air to create the smoke screen. Ida-kun, ready? Uraraka tapped Ida's armor. Engine boost. Ida revved his engines. Uraraka slapped his back. Zero gravity. Ida shot forward like a torpedo, frictionless and silent through the air. Izuku stepped out from behind the ice wall. He charged up one for all to 8%. Hey! Izuku shouted at Inasa. Is that all you've got? Inasa's eyes flared. You want more? Passion! He directed all his wind at Izuku. Izuku dug his iron saws into the ground, bracing himself. The wind tore at his costume, the pressure immense. Hold it. Just a few seconds. Above, the sky turned gray with smoke and ash from Bakugo's explosions. Inasa didn't see the silver bullet flying through the smoke until it was too late. Ida, floating and propelled by his engines, crashed into Inasa's side, tagging 2 of his targets instantly. What? Inasa tumbled out of the air. Now! Izuku yelled. Bakugo dove from the smoke, unleashing a stun grenade directly in Inasa's face. Flash! In the confusion, Izuku closed the distance. He didn't hit Inasa. He simply tapped the final target on Inasa's chest. Target eliminated, Izuku said, breathing hard. Inasa blinked, his vision clearing. He looked at his targets. All lit up. He had failed the first round? Him? The top scorer? He looked up at the UA students. They weren't gloating. They were checking on each other. Are you hurt, Ida? I am functional. Midoriya, your bracing caused stress on your knees. I'm fine. Bakugo, that smoke was perfect. Shut up. It was better than perfect. Inasa started to laugh. It was a loud, boisterous laugh. Amazing! Inasa shouted, slamming his head into the ground in a bow. I have lost. Your passion for cooperation is truly hot. In the control room, Mara, the tired exam proctor, watched the screens. Class 1A, he muttered, scratching his stubble. Usually, they rely on raw power. This year, they're acting like a paramilitary unit. Scary. Aizawa, standing in the shadows of the viewing deck, took a sip of his juice pouch. They're not a unit, he corrected quietly. They're a family. And they're done letting the world break them. The first round ended. All of Class 1A had passed. As they sat in the waiting room, hydrating and eating energy jellies, the atmosphere was electric. Man, that was intense. Kaminari buzzed. But did you see Midoriya's team? They plowed through Seijin High like a lawnmower. Izuku sat on a bench, towel around his neck. Uraraka sat next to him, leaning her head on his shoulder. Ida was polishing his glasses nearby. Bakugo was sulking in the corner, but he was drinking a sports drink that Izuku had tossed him. Izuku looked at his hands. They weren't trembling. He thought about the nightmare, the one where he was alone in the dark, strangled by black whips. It felt distant now. The black whip energy was still there, dormant inside him, but he wasn't afraid of it. He knew that if he lost control, Aizawa was watching. If he fell, Uraraka would catch him. If he stalled, Ida would carry him. And if he hesitated, Bakugo would kick him into gear. He clenched his fist, not in anger, but in resolve. One for all. It wasn't just a quirk. It was a promise. And for the first time, Izuku felt like he could actually keep it. Round 2 is starting. The announcement blared. Rescue scenario. Izuku stood up. He looked at his friends. Ready? He asked. Always, Uraraka said, slapping her cheeks to psych herself up. Let us proceed with haste and caution, Ida nodded. Let's just win and go home, Bakugo grunted, walking past them toward the exit. They walked out into the light of the arena, together. The anteroom between the first and second stages of the National Takoba Arena was filled with the smell of sweat, cooling packs, and high-octane anxiety. The remaining 100 students, the survivors of the crushing of UA, stood in clusters, hydrating and tending to minor scrapes. The screen above them displayed the passing list. Every single name from Class 1A was illuminated in green. Izuku Midoriya sat on a bench, a towel draped over his head. Under the towel, his eyes were closed. He wasn't sleeping, he was calibrating. In the past, this moment would have been consumed by frantic muttering. What's the next test? What if I fail? What if I can't save anyone? But today, the silence inside his head was profound. Midoriya, he lifted the towel. Shoto Todoroki stood there, holding 2 bottles of water. He offered one to Izuku. Thanks, Todoroki-kun. Todoroki sat down next to him. That formation in the first round. The phalanx. It was effective. I didn't expect Bakugo to play a support role. He didn't see it as support, Izuku said, cracking the bottle open. A small smile touched his lips. He saw it as maximizing his kill count while using us as bait. But it worked. He listened. He respects strength, Todoroki noted. And transparency. You telling us the truth. It changed the dynamic. Before Izuku could respond, the loudspeakers crackled to life. Attention, examinees. Please direct your attention to the field. The scenario is preparing to launch. The heavy blast doors separating them from the arena groaned and began to open. A collective gasp swept through the room. The arena, which had been a sprawling, flat terrain only an hour ago, was gone. In its place was a nightmare. Buildings were toppled like dominoes. Bridges were snapped in half, dangling precariously over artificial ravines. Fires burned in designated zones, sending plumes of black smoke into the artificial sky. It looked like the aftermath of a catastrophic villain attack, or a war zone. Disaster strikes without warning, Mara's tired voice echoed over the PA system. Heroing isn't just about fighting villains. It's about what comes after. Search and rescue. Tria. Chaos management. Figures emerged from the shadows of the ruins. They were dressed in civilian clothes, covered in fake blood and theatrical makeup. The HUC, Help Us Company. Professional victims. There are bystanders trapped throughout the zone, Mara droned. Your job is to save them. You will be scored on speed, safety, and procedure. But be warned, the villains haven't left the scene just yet. A siren wailed, a long, mournful sound that signaled the start of the exam. Go! The students surged forward, a chaotic wave of color and quirks. Class 1A, stick together! Ida bellowed, his voice cutting through the noise. Do not scatter blindly. Establish a perimeter. Usually, in the rush of adrenaline, the class would have fragmented. But the success of the first round had forged a new instinct. They looked to the center. They looked to the green lightning. Izuku didn't run immediately. He stood at the edge of the rubble field, his eyes darting back and forth, scanning the topography. Zone A, collapse hazards. Zone B, fire. Zone C, flooding. Ochako. Izuku barked. Not Uraraka-san. In the field, honorifics were inefficient. On it. Uraraka stepped up, touching her fingertips together. Take Tsuyu, Cyril, and Shoji. Secure the high ground on that tilted skyscraper. I need aerial reconnaissance and a debris-clearing team. If a building looks unstable, float it. Roger. Uraraka signaled her team. They moved instantly. Ida, Midoriya, you're in charge of transport. Take Sato, Kirishima, and Ojiro. Set up a triage center near the entrance. You need to clear a path for the wounded. Use your speed to ferry victims from the hot zones to the gate. Understood. Transport team, with me. Ida revved his engines, creating a cloud of dust as he sped off. Bakugo was already vibrating with impatience, small explosions popping in his palms. Don't tell me to carry old ladies, Deku, or I'll blast you. I wouldn't dream of it, Izuku said, his eyes narrowing as he looked at the smoke-filled horizon. You're the vanguard. Take Tokoyami, Kaminari, and Mina. Patrol the perimeter of the fire zone. If villains show up, you intercept. Keep them away from the rescue operations. Bakugo grinned, a sharp, dangerous expression. Search and destroy. Finally, a language I speak. Let's go, extras. Move it, Todoroki, Yayorozu, you're with me, Izuku said, activating full cowling at 5%. We're going into the heavy collapse zone. We need precision ice to stabilize structures and creation for first aid supplies. Right, Todoroki said. Ready, Yayorozu nodded, producing a first aid kit from her arm. They moved. It wasn't the frantic scramble of children playing hero. It was the deployment of a unit. Izuku slid down a slope of scree, his iron saws digging into the loose gravel. Help! Someone help me! A HUC employee, an elderly man with a fake head wound, was pinned under a slab of concrete. He was acting his heart out, wailing in pain. In the canon timeline, Izuku had hesitated here, startled by the man's scolding for his lack of assurance. This time, Izuku didn't hesitate. He didn't just see a victim. He saw a problem to be solved logically. He slid to a stop next to the man. He didn't immediately try to lift the rock. Sir! Izuku's voice was loud, clear, and projected authority. I am the hero Deku. We are here to help you. What is your name? The HUC actor blinked, momentarily breaking character. The boy's presence was intense. It's Kenji. Kenji-san, listen to me. Keep your breathing steady, Izuku commanded, placing a hand on the man's shoulder to ground him. He turned his head. Todoroki. Structure stability? Todoroki was already there, analyzing the slab. It's part of a larger load-bearing wall. If we lift it, the secondary debris might crush his legs. Yayorozu. Izuku called, creating hydraulic jacks. Yayorozu shouted, a steel device emerging from her torso. Good. Todoroki, freeze the secondary debris to lock it in place. Yayorozu, jack the primary slab. On my mark. 3, 2, 1, lift. The coordination was seamless. The eyes snapped into place, the jack whirred, and the slab lifted 3 inches, just enough. Izuku reached in, not with reckless strength, but with controlled precision. He grabbed the man's vest. Clear! He pulled Kenji free. Triage team! Izuku shouted into his earpiece. I am inbound. Ida's voice crackled. A second later, a silver blur drifted to a halt nearby. Patient status? Leg trauma? Possible crush syndrome. Transport with care. Understood. Ida scooped the man up. Do not worry, citizen. You are safe now. Ida sped off. Izuku stood up, wiping dust from his gloves. Plus 10 points for command, a voice muttered from the shadows. The HUC actor, now safe in Ida's arms, was scribbling on a hidden waterproof notepad. -0 for hesitation. Izuku didn't hear it. He was already moving to the next cry for help. On the other side of the arena, near the wind zone, the atmosphere was significantly colder. Inasa Yorashi was moving debris with his wind, laughing loudly. Yes. Passionate rescue. He had barely scraped through the first round. His targets had been decimated by the UA phalanx, but he had managed to tag enough stragglers from other schools to qualify in the bottom tier. His pride was bruised, but his spirit, and his grudge, was intact. He spotted a familiar head of red and white hair. Todoroki had separated from Izuku briefly to handle a fire near the chemical plant set piece. Inasa narrowed his eyes beneath his shiketsu cap. Endeavor's son. The eyes of a man who looks down on everything. Inasa floated down, landing heavily near Todoroki. Hey! Inesa shouted over the roar of the fire. You're freezing the structure too fast. You're making the metal brittle. Where is your passion for the materials? Todoroki didn't look up. He continued to spray a controlled stream of frost. The structural integrity is fine. Wind would fan these flames. Stand down. Stand down? Inesa bristled. The wind around him picked up, swirling dust into a frenzy. UUA students are all the same. Arrogant. You think because your little leader organized the formation, you own the field? Your eyes are just as cold as your father's. Todoroki stiffened. The ice spread a little too aggressively, cracking a pipe. Don't talk about my father, Todoroki said, his voice dropping an octave. And don't interfere. I have this handled. You have nothing handled if you can't see the heart of the rescue. Inesa yelled, summoning a gale that threatened to blow the fire toward a group of HUC victims huddled nearby. Stop it! Todoroki shouted, raising a wall of ice to block the wind. The elements clashed, wind and ice, creating a dangerous vortex. Static. Problem detected in Sector 4, Izuku's voice cut through Todoroki's earpiece. It wasn't a question. Shoto. Status. Todoroki pressed a finger to his ear, glaring at Inesa. Inesa Yorashi is interfering. He's being irrational. I am not irrational. I am passionate. Inesa screamed at the earpiece he couldn't even hear. Suddenly, a green streak shot over the rubble. Izuku landed between them, cracking the pavement. He didn't look like the nervous boy Inesa remembered from the license exam start. He looked like a weary veteran. Izuku stood up, looking from Todoroki to Inesa. We don't have time for this, Izuku said. Tell him to leave. Inesa pointed a gloved hand at Todoroki. He's a hazard. He's efficient, Izuku countered calmly. He walked up to Inesa, entering the Shiketsu student's personal space. Yorashi-kun, right? You hate endeavor. Inesa blinked, taken aback by the bluntness. Yes. His eyes. They are full of hatred. And this guy has the same eyes. Look at him, Izuku said, pointing at Shoto. Inesa looked. Shoto wasn't glaring with hatred. He was looking at the huddled victims behind the fire line with genuine concern. He was holding back his fire aside, sweating from the effort of maintaining the ice in the heat. Those aren't Endeavor's eyes, Izuku said firmly. Those are the eyes of someone trying to save people. And right now, your wind is feeding the fire that threatens them. Is that what a passionate hero does? Burns the victims to prove a point? Inesa froze. He looked at the fire. The wind he had summoned was indeed pulling the flames closer to the civilians. He paled. Shoto, Izuku turned to his friend. Drop the ice wall. It's creating a backdraft. Use your fire side to suck the oxygen out of the combustion zone. Control the temperature. But... Shoto hesitated. Using his fire for precision control was new. You can do it, Izuku said. I trust you. And Inesa, Izuku turned back. Don't fight the fire. Move the victims. Use your fine control to lift them over the hazard zone. You're the best at aerial transport here. We need you. We need you. The words hit Inesa like a physical blow. A rival school student, the one who had beaten him, was asking for his help. Not commanding him like a peon, but acknowledging his specific strength. Inesa looked at the victims. They looked terrified. He slapped his cheeks with both hands. Smack. Understood. Inesa roared, blood trickling from his forehead where he had headbutted the ground earlier. I will move them with the gentlest breeze imaginable. Good, Izuku said. Shoto on 3. The de-escalation took 30 seconds. In canon, it had taken a villain attack and a near-death experience. Here, it took a leader pointing out the illogical nature of their ego. As Inesa gently floated the victims to safety and Todoroki snuffed out the flames, Izuku tapped his comms. Sector 4 secure. Moving to Sector 5. But before he could move, the ground shook. A massive explosion blew out the perimeter wall of the arena. Boom! The siren changed pitch. It was deeper, more urgent. Villain invasion! Villain invasion! Mara's voice announced. Terrorists have breached the area. Hero candidates, suppress the threat while continuing the evacuation. From the smoke of the breach, a legion of minions poured out. And walking calmly behind them, looking like a mafia don in a white suit, was Gang Orca. "Tell me," the number 10 hero boomed, his voice amplified by his quirk. "Do you have the resolve to save and fight at the same time? Or will you crumble?" Panic rippled through the other schools. Ketsubutsu students faltered. Seijin students fell back. "They're here! It's Gang Orca! He's huge!" Izuku stared at the approaching army. He felt the familiar buzz of One for All, and the darker, colder hum of Black Whip deep in his gut. He pressed his comms button. "All units, listen up!" His voice was broadcast to Class 1A, Plan Omega. "The rescue team is now the rear guard. Continue evacuation. Do not stop. Combat team, converge on my position. We are the shield. On my way!" Bakugo yelled, the sound of explosions getting louder over the channel. "I shall secure the final transport." Ida confirmed. "We're holding the line," Kirishima added. Izuku stood alone for a moment, as Gang Orca's minions rushed him. He took a deep breath. "Don't use Black Whip yet. Save it for the big guy. Stick to the basics. Full cowling, 8%. He leaped. He didn't just punch. He moved like a pinball. He bounced off a piece of rubble, kicked a minion's gun away, grabbed another minion by the collar, and threw him into a third. Smash! He landed in a crouch. 6 minions were down. "Not bad," Gang Orca muttered, stepping over his fallen subordinates. "But you are one child. He's not alone." An explosion of ice swept across the battlefield, freezing a dozen minions in their tracks. Shoto Todoroki slid down an ice ramp, flames dancing on his left side. "Die!" Bakugo dropped from the sky like a guided missile, unleashing a howitzer impact that cleared the entire left flank of the enemy formation. Passion! Inasa Yorashi landed on the right, summoning a whirlwind that gathered the remaining minions into a dizzying vortex. Izuku stood in the center of the formation. To his left, Todoroki. To his right, Bakugo. Flanking them, Inasa. It was a lineup of sheer destructive power. "Gang Orca-sensei," Izuku called out, his voice steady. "We are prioritizing the safety of the civilians. But if you try to pass this line, we will stop you." Gang Orca grinned, a terrifying, toothy sight. Arrogance. "Let's test that foundation." He unleashed his hypersonic waves. Screech. The sound was paralyzing. It vibrated in their bones, disorienting their equilibrium. In canon, this had dropped Shoto and Inasa instantly because they were separated and unprepared. "Earplugs!" Izuku shouted. Class 1A had prepared for present mixed classes. They all jammed tactical foam plugs, standard issue in their updated costumes, into their ears. It didn't block the sound entirely, but it dulled the paralyzing edge. "Bakugo, suppressive fire. Keep him blind." "Shoto, floor trap." "Inasa, keep the minions off our backs. Don't order me around." Bakugo yelled, but he immediately launched a stun grenade volley. Boom! Flash! Gang Orca flinched at the light. "Now!" Todoroki slammed his hand down. A glacier surged forward, aiming to trap Orca's legs. Orca shattered the ice with a sonic blast, but the distraction worked. Izuku was already in the air. One for all, 15%. Manchester smash! He came down like a hammer. Orca looked up, crossing his massive arms to block. Crack! The impact created a crater. Orca's knees buckled. He slid back 3 meters. "Heavy," Orca grunted. But not enough. He grabbed Izuku's leg. "Danger!" Izuku felt the grip tightening. Orca prepared a point-blank sonic blast. Panic spikes. Black Whip stirs. "No," Izuku told the quirk. "Not panic. Utility. Release." Izuku whispered. A single tendril of Black Whip shot out from his other arm, wrapping around a nearby steel girder. Izuku yanked. He didn't pull himself away. He pulled himself and Orca toward the girder. Or rather, he pulled himself down, altering his trajectory. He swung around Orca's arm like a gymnast, using the villain's own grip as a pivot point. He kicked Orca in the jaw with his iron soul. Orca flinched, his grip loosening. Izuku retracted the whip and backflipped away, landing next to Bakugo. "What was that black crap?" Bakugo asked, keeping his eyes on the target. "New move," Izuku panted. Work in progress. It's gross, Bakugo decided. Do it again. Gang Orca straightened his tie. He looked at the 4 students blocking his path. Behind them, the last of the HUC victims were being loaded into Ida's transport area. The villain checked his watch. Time, a buzzer sounded. The siren stopped. The sonic waves ceased. The minions stopped groaning and stood up, dusting themselves off. Gang Orca relaxed his posture. He looked at Izuku. You evacuated the entire zone in under 12 minutes, Orca said. And you held the line without suffering a single casualty. Most students break formation when I arrive. You dug in. He walked over to Izuku. He loomed over the boy. Who made the call to switch to defensive shielding? I did, Izuku said, standing tall.